Good evening, good evening, good evening. Another day. Welcome back to another episode. Like I always do, I start off with thank you, Lord, for waking me up this morning. I thank you for giving me another chance to do something that I love to do. Without you, I'm nothing. Thank you. So today I want to talk about something very interesting. I had a few people uh, kept asking me to talk about it. Basically because of my book, one of my books, and I was gonna wait later on down the road to really touch on that topic. So after a couple of requests, I figure I'll just go ahead and get it over with. Sex. We all understand and know that we have a very sexual society, and sometimes people are not comfortable talking about sex for whatever reason. It can be a sensitive subject. It can unveil vulnerabilities. Or people just ain't, they're just not about that life. They just don't want to have those conversations, especially publicly. You may talk about it among your friends, your girlfriends, you know what I'm saying? You hang out with the fellas, y'all may talk about it. But to have a public platform to have these conversations, not everybody are comfortable having this conversation. Me, I took it a step further. Um, I love poetry, and that's how I deal with things. No matter what I'm going through, that's how I cope with it, or that's my outlet where I write poetry. I write, at one point I wrote 3 or 4 poems a day. And my first book was, I'll show you right here. My very first book I've written is an all poetry book. And I write about everything, family, love, black empowerment. I wrote about everything, even sex, right? And I had hundreds and hundreds of poems that I have written, and enough poems that I have written from the sexual point of view, I did a whole chapter. So I went beyond that. After I had wrote and published that book, I got a lot of people. They talked about everything in the book, but it was always focused on the sex part, because that's the type of society we have, right? And I guess that's, that gets people attention. So I decided, okay, I'm gonna go on. After I write my poetry book, I want to talk about black empowerment. After I wrote that one, I moved on to write this one, Sexualized Society. And it had done so well. I have written it, and I took my time writing this book. But it's a very interesting book because, you know, people thought it was going to be raunchy. It was going to be, ghetto, nasty. It wasn't going to be what they found out it to be. Very educational book. Yeah, I get nasty in there too, don't get me wrong. I'm very raw. But that's just how I write anyway. I just let it all out. Because if I'm not authentic and I'm not raw and real about anything that I do, You may not like it, but a lot of people do enjoy it. But I enjoy writing that book, and I'm gonna tell you why. Because in reality, conversations, about sex tap into our deepest vulnerabilities, right? They're not just about preferences or techniques. They're about you, your body, your desires, your emotional needs. It's about all of that. You know what I'm saying? And the fear of whether your partner um, truly wants you in that way, in that deeply personal way. Because every partner is not that open. They're really shy about their sexual privacy and how they do things. Even when that light go off and the clothes are off, you're naked, and you in that intimate form. A lot of people have to be pulled out that shell that they hide to give their partner that deep personal um, sexual satisfaction. So when I wrote that book, I wanted to break down everything: the mental, the emotional, psychologically, and the physical, because all that plays into our sexual society, right? And before you get into that final stage, there's always that foreplay, that six play, that 12 play, however y'all want to do it, to warm the body and mind up. Or should I say, to get her wet, or for her to get that man hard, that bamboo. But it's so much more to having sex, making love, being intimate. So you got to have these adult conversations sometimes. So when I wrote that book, I was deeply embedded on how I wanted to present that book, how I wanted to break it down. Because a lot of people, I get emails, phone calls, text messages, they hit me up like, damn, bro, like I didn't know it was like that. Like I didn't even know you thought like that, you know. But it's a beautiful book because it gives you so many phases of sex. It gives you so many phases of what happened before that final blow. I know it's a different way of saying things, but y'all know what I mean. When you start to get into that intercourse, that mental, that psychological, that companionship, all of that matters, you know. But some people just want to take a shot, get that blue chew, that pink powder, and they just want to fuck. I get it, but there's so much more to that because a lot of women want to be made love to. They want to be, you know, sexualized mentally before they reach their orgasm. They want to feel it all through their body, through their mind before the intercourse comes. But even before all of that, I don't think people understand how having a good relationship complements a good sexual relationship. Getting along, not disrespecting each other, that trust. I don't think people understand. There's so much layers to what that bond you should have with your partner before you even think about having sex. Because if you good mentally with your partner, if you good psychologically with your partner, by the time you get to having sex, making love, fucking, however you want to call it, by the time you get to that, the beautiful thing. And not everybody's comfortable talking about that. I have no problem talking about it because I keep it real. And I've done my homework, you know. And it's interesting because I had a lot of conversations. I did my research with my book. So I talked about different things to different people. And that lesbian, right? That lesbian life. I had a couple of conversations because they be like, they read my book. I'm like, listen, what do you know about that lesbian sex? Like, you wrote about it and you did a pretty good job. Just because I did my homework. I spoke to a lot of people, they're bi or they're just straight up lesbian. No dickly at all. It was hard for me to believe, but it's really happened right now in society. These women just want women, and they happy about it. So I had a couple of conversations with a couple, and I was very intrigued by that because when you're on the outside looking in, you just see the physical part, and you always try to understand, like, how do they make that work? And it was very interesting how they broke it down. So I was very intrigued by that because the imagination of two women having sex was totally beyond me. And the numbers was growing and growing and growing with this pride, LGBTQ, whatever, however you say it. Forgive me, and no disrespect. But at the end of the day, it's growing, right? And you listening and you hearing conversations and you watching with your own eyes how the numbers are growing. I'm like, damn, they really like eating pussy. Like, they really like it. But talking to them is so much more to that. It's like, and people going to disagree with me. Of course, they're going to disagree with me. But it's like a man and a woman. How they feel about each other, how they love each other, how they fight, how they argue, how they live with each other. It's just like, a man and a woman. Whether you agree with it or disagree with it. And their sexualized lives are no different when it comes to having that bond, having that respect, having that psychological connection, having that mental and emotional connection before they even have intercourse. I was very, very shocked. So, big shout out to all the lesbians out there. You know what I'm saying? That's that I learned so much from. But again, our sexualized society as a whole is very, very complicated sometimes because although we all have our own thoughts on how we having sex and who we having sex with, how important sex is, because in a lot of relationships, sex is not a number one priority, and it shouldn't be. But being safe is a priority. You know what I'm saying? I know a lot of people like to go raw. If you went in a relationship, your main relationship, you shouldn't be having raw sex without protection, right? You know, everybody like to feel that wet pussy, and everybody like to feel that hard penis. Um, but you got to protect yourself. So I just wanted to talk about that for a split second. But overall, the psychological, mental part about sex is very, very important, and we don't talk about that enough. If you want to sit down with our children and teach them about sex, you know, I think that's one of the things we need to talk to them about. There's so much more before intercourse that happens, and how to keep a relationship alive and keep that fire in the bedroom. You know, it's all right to exercise that pound town, but it's also okay to kiss him on the neck or kiss him on the neck and go down his body and go down her body and just hit that G spot and just make her feel good and wet. And the man, you know, make him feel good inside and out. That's all. That's all before intercourse, right? So I just wanted to touch on that real quick. I know it was something that a lot of people didn't expect me to do, but hey, you know, when you got a lot of requests to talk about it, sometimes you got to be about it. If you haven't got this book, go out and get it. Straight up, go out and get it. It's on Amazon. It's on Amazon. I want to thank everybody. I'll be going live pretty soon. But I want to thank everybody that's out there supporting me. Hit that like button and share this page. Share this YouTube channel. Share it to anybody. Let them know that your boy Prez69 is doing his thing. Again, I want to thank everybody. Our, you know, our agenda is to make sure that everybody have a voice. Our agenda is to make sure that everybody got a voice, and this is what this platform is about. It's my voice, our agenda. But we all have an agenda because we all have a voice. So I want to thank everybody again for tuning in. Hit that like button, violate that like button. For everybody that has subscribed to my YouTube channel, thank you, thank you, thank you. Share this video. Share this video. I love you guys. Enjoy your evening. God bless.